Shawne today for our interview. I spoke to Shawne for the first time about 6 weeks ago, and she has an immediate warmth and incredible charisma, which you just connect with immediately. I got a bit of her CV here, which reads like a dream CV, really. So she's won 6 Emmys, and she's been featured on CNN, CBS Early Show, ABC, NBC, Fox, CBC, USA Today. And she trains and consults for Fortune 500 companies, universities, government agencies, and entrepreneurs. A 5-minute video on Project Forgive went viral, seen by tens of thousands across the globe. And one of the reasons we specifically asked her here today was so she can talk about communicating in an effective way through video. So, big welcome to you, Shawne.
Neil, I'm delighted to be here, and I liked you instantly, too. You have the charisma going on as well, bud.
Sometimes.
And humble.
So tell me, how important is authenticity when you're communicating?
Oh my God, it's the only thing that exists. You know, we're in this marketing stage for probably an authentic marketing stage for another 30 years. You can see it in our songs. You can see it in social media. Social media, that's one of the reasons social media has exploded at this time, because it really gives us the opportunity in a safe environment to sit at our computer and say what we really think or say what we really mean. So this authenticity explosion is just off the hook. And the more authentic you are, and you hit the nail on the head, the more charismatic you are, because you're present, you're here. And people can feel a line of bull, as we'd say in the US. People can feel it when you've got a line of bull going on, and they certainly can feel on their skin. It resonates so deeply when someone's being straight. So when you got authenticity handled, you can rock. I really believe you can have anything. I do.
And yet the current world seems to be so full of spin doctors and people manipulating messages. So how does that, don't they understand how important authenticity is?
Well, you know, separate of that, because we can only worry about us and focus on us, okay, like me. And the game becomes when you go to a networking event in business, when you're asking the hot girl out and you just think she's so gorgeous, when you are going on camera, because I teach on camera skills, to be so powerful and lower your fear, it really becomes a game of how do you lower your fear? And this is it's a biology thing. I'm a researcher by trade. Our amygdala brain kicks in anytime there's a risk of fear, you know, flight or fright, and we actually translate it when we're actually connecting with people. So those that become authentic, when they can lower that fear in the moment, that's when miracles manifest. You can't manage other people's fear. When you lower yours, you naturally calm everyone down around you.
Sure. And do you think you can teach people to communicate charismatically, or are you born charismatic?
I combo both, because I've met people that are just out of the chute. They're extremely charismatic. And I've also met people that have worked at it. And to me, charisma is about being present and lowering fear. Can I use an analogy that's kind of,
Sure.
It's kind of odd. And fear is like a fart, you know? And I did say fart, and that's an odd word to use in business. It's an odd word to use. I'm not even one of those that likes fart jokes. I'm a feminist rhetorician. I'm a little hoity-toity, okay? But if you think about it, if you're walking through the mall and all of a sudden this fart smell hits you, you're like, dang, scooching out of that smell. But it only lasts about 5 seconds or so. And fear is kind of like that. So when you're at the networking event and you really want to meet this CEO and you step on his toe as soon as you meet him, when you can learn and accept that this might only last about 20 seconds, that in those moments when you notice it's going on and you say, you know what, this is really awkward, this is kind of like a fart, that's literally what I say to myself, take a deep breath, Shawne, and get back here. And boom, I'm right back there with charisma. So does it come being born? Does it come being learning? It's a combo of both. And if you're born with a little of it and you advance it, rock and roll, and I believe anybody can be charismatic, because that's our natural state. Our natural state is charismatic and present.
Okay. And so most people hate seeing themselves, don't they, in the media? Don't like their voices, don't like the way they look. Is that something which, again, how do you deal with that in your training to get people over that particular irrational fear?
You get used to it. It's a game of playing, and not everybody has that. There's a certain biological type that doesn't like that, and it's a matter of getting used to it, because it's fear-based. As soon as you really start going on camera or listening to your voice, by the third time you're rocking it. By the third time, Most people do it one time, see themselves and say, oh my gosh, that was terrible. I was, you know, the reporter was a mess. It didn't ask me the questions I wanted to ask. But the thing was, had you had the skills, because it's a skill set, and were able to lower your fear, you would have been able to manage that interview powerfully. It's a skill. That's all it is. And then once you master the skill and start doing it a little bit, it becomes a riot. It actually becomes a lot of fun.
And you're the first person I've ever met who's an expert in taking a PhD, I believe, in gossip. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So what was it that drew you to being a PhD in gossip, and how does gossip compare to storytelling?
Sure. And, you know, I love that you asked me that, because no one's ever asked me that before. So I'm almost done with my dissertation, so I'm this close to being Dr. Shawne. So usually when you think gossip, you think mean and nasty and malicious, don't you? Isn't that what you think? Most people think that. Well, research shows only 5 to 7% of our gossip talk is actually mean or malicious. We're actually really, really good people. And the word gossip comes from the word God-siv, meaning close to God. It says so much about it, where a word comes from. And what would happen in the 8th, 9th, 10th centuries, the doulas would deliver babies in the community and share the precious news that the precious news of a child was born from God. So over time, that changed, right? That changed over time. And if you think about gossip, though, gossip is the best form of word of mouth on the planet. Oh my gosh, listen to Neil's show. Oh my goodness, go see that movie. Oh my gosh, go get trained by Shawne. Oh my goodness, do not hire that plumber. He's going to take your money and he's never going to fix your pipes. All those are realms of gossip, and we cannot not gossip. So, you know, when you say I'm a gossip expert, my expertise is particularly in communication and interpersonal communication. Gossip happens to be the subset where I focus my expertise, and I niche a little farther and go into celebrity gossip, which I have a lot of expertise on. And globally, there's probably about 100 of us in the world that are really focused on gossip and have this type of expertise. And it's just a fun topic, because 90% of what comes out of our mouths is gossip. Men and women gossip the same amount. And I used gossip theory to make Project Forgive go viral. So it has applicable uses. It's natural. It's fun. And your storytelling, and actually it is storytelling. I've never had anyone ask it quite like that, Neil. And what's unique about it, though, is when you're gossiping, when you're in the heat of it, it's constructed storytelling. So I might start talking about Angelina Jolie and say, oh my gosh, this woman's amazing. She had both her breasts removed. I'm just so inspired by her. And then you might add, if you knew about the story, I know, isn't it amazing? Did you see the article in People magazine? And that she did this for her children? And so it's a co-construction of a story, which is probably the basic tenet of gossip. And we are creatures of storytelling.
So gossip you could think it's a positive thing. It should have a positive meaning rather than any sort of negative context.
Yeah, it's just got a bad rap. Just like used car salesmen or lawyers. You know how there's a lot of lawyer jokes? It's a stereotype. Sure. And yeah, and gosh, I've been talking about gossip for a good 10 years. People are shifting in the realm of gossip and thinking about it, because it really has a bad connotation, and that's really not the definition. It's really not.
That's what social media is, really, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Social media is all gossip. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Okay. So, is there any particular questions that you feel, or any techniques for getting the best out of interviewees when you're asking questions? What is it that really opens up an interview to be really fascinating and engaging? You know,
I call it the cycle of reciprocity. It's harder to do on Google Hangouts because we're here together. And so, like Neil, like I'm watching you, every time you look down, look at me for a second, every time you look down, because that's what a lot of interviewers are doing. We're trying to create the energy and what am I going to say next. As soon as you go forward as an interviewer, or anyone for that matter, it chops what's called the cycle of reciprocity. And the cycle of reciprocity is a giving and receiving. It's something that you and I connected with when we first talked. There was a cool cycle. You know, you called it charisma. I said, oh, this guy has a really open heart. He's a giver. I can feel him. And we had a nice synergy that happened. It's a giving and receiving that happens. And it's kind of like when you go on a date with that guy or that gal, and it's the first date, and you talk for 9 hours. Have you ever done that before? Like you just go brrr, back and forth. It's so awesome. And you're like, oh my gosh, where did the time go? Because this beautiful synergy gets created. And like when you're interviewing, or when I train people to be interviewed, we're constantly playing the game of creating this seesaw ping pong back and forth. Now, going back to this analogy of fear or a fart, the only thing that stops the cycle of reciprocity is taking your breath or discomfort. It's very subtle. So, like, for instance, and what you're not doing anything wrong by looking down at your notes. It's very common. This is one of the hardest ways to interview somebody, is what we're doing right now. So I'm really impressed that you're doing it, and you're doing a very good job. And when you're doing a radio interview, for instance, no one can see you look down. And it's very slight, but every time someone looks down or every time I look away, something shifts in the energy, and it's always bringing it back. But it doesn't mean something's wrong. It just means a shift in the energy. So the game is to always bring this synergy of cycle of reciprocity back so charisma can be present. And I'm noticing, too, in this conversation, I'm talking more than I normally would. Because in an interview, a TV interview, it's going to be 2 to 3 sentences, maybe 4. When you know the rules, you can break them all. Radio, it's going to be a little bit longer. Google Hangouts has a different forum to it, because what I'm doing is, as an interviewee and you're an interviewer, I'm counterbalancing your charisma, your energy, because I'm much more animated than you. That's just how we're biologically made. So I'm going to keep the energy going by talking a little bit longer, using my hands a little bit. But if I start doing like this, it's hard to watch a Google Hangout like people are watching right now. So I'm being conscious, like, ooh, are my hands going too fast? Because you want your hands to go slower. So there's lots of things to consider. Good question.
So the object of this exercise, by the way, is that you're the star of the show, not me. So you should be comfortable with me.
Plus the nature of you're a very humble person. You just are. And different people, and that's a beautiful thing too. And it's not good or bad. It's just simply who you are. And some people would have that mindset that the person on the show is a star. Some people would have that we're both stars creating something together. And then some hosts would have they're the star. So this is just your natural way of expressing yourself that I could already tell. I don't know if you're married or anything. Did I ask you if you're married?
You haven't yet, no.
Are you married?
Yes. Okay,
got it. And my bet is that you're a lot like my husband, and you treat your wife like a goddess. I would bet that. You have a very gentlemanly, like more from my era of time. So it makes perfect sense to me that you would interview like this. Perfect sense, because that's just who you are.
And do you feel that you can communicate well with anybody, or do you think there's people sometimes where the energy is so different?
Well, you know, the answer is it depends, even as you're asking, because as we're talking, and I'm wondering who's going to watch this. So as a communicator, as I'm interviewing with you, I'm like, okay, am I hitting the bases? What if we get some 20-somethings? What if we get some 30-somethings, 40-somethings, 50-somethings, 60-somethings? Culturally, we all have different ways of listening or receiving information. So I know this is new for you, not quite sure where that's going to be. So I'm dancing in different ways of communicating with you. So I'm hitting some of these different needs of these different demographics. And it's a complicated construct, but when you're talking to college students, it's a very different game, dang. I still use farting even if I'm talking to 60-year-olds, because it's become like part of the way that I brand fear, because I teach in fear. So it's a mixed bag. How's that?
So would you say broadcasting's more about listening or talking?
I'd say it's both. And I'd say it's both, and I say both are important, and I would say that it's what's most important in broadcasting, whether you're the interviewer or the interviewee, is that you can lower your fear. And look, you know what? I got a great story. Have you ever heard can I give you a story?
Please do. No, we'd love to hear it.
Okay, great. So General Colin Powell, you've heard of General Colin Powell, yes?
Yeah.
Some people haven't. He's a very famous general in the U.S., a very profound man who has respect. We're so political in the U.S. as in other countries as well, and our political parties, both our political parties, respect this man. He's a very respected man. And I was getting ready to interview him. I've gotten to interview some really cool people, and I was getting ready to interview him. I was working with Ford Motor Company Fund. I'm in Detroit. I work a lot with the automotives. So I'm at this event, getting ready to interview the general, and usually when we interview somebody famous, we bring in the lights and the cameras. We have 45 minutes to set it up. Then the celebrity comes in. Then the celebrity leaves after a 15, 20-minute interview, and then we break down the set. So I'm all set up, ready to go, and the Ford folks come in and they say, Shawne, change of plans. Okay? So immediately what happens over here is, I've got it all set up, change of plans. This isn't about confidence. This is about the amygdala brain and how we operate biologically. I'm a pretty confident gal. I've interviewed hundreds of celebrities, lots of presidents. That's not what it is. As soon as that Ford folks say, Shawne, change of plans, I got this deep breath, because that's the place where I go in discomfort. Tell me, where are we going to go? Well, what we want to do is we want to go in the ballroom. A big ballroom, audio issues, sound issues, all kinds of things. Deep breath. I call it going back in the love space or compassion or just a very calm space. No problem. Let's go. So we pick up the gear. We move to the ballroom. We're getting set up, and the doors swing open. And in walk 50 big cheeses from Ford, and they line the side of the wall. You know, they come in line. Deep breath, okay. Then we're set up. Here comes Colin Powell. He walks in. He walks up to me. We start what's called that cycle of reciprocity. It's that going back and forth in the interview. The interview is going awesome, and then he does the worst thing he possibly can do. What he does is, as he's talking, he wants to give credit to Ford. So he says, the Ford Foundation, it's not the Ford Foundation. It's Ford Motor Company Fund. People mess it up all the time. That's one of their branding issues, right? So as soon as he says Ford Foundation, you can feel the energy suck out of the side of the room with all the Ford folks, because, oh my gosh, he said the wrong thing. Here's me. What I do, because we all have different things that we do to manage stuff, is I just played with them. I said, Ford Foundation? You mean Ford Fund. He's like, oh. So as soon as I played with him, said Ford Fund, what happened over here with all the Ford folks, they all calmed down, all their brrr went down. I'm nice and calm, and then what happens to the general? He goes brrr because he just screwed it up, right? So there's this energy exchange that's always happening. It's the same thing that's happening in an interview, like with us right now. And there's like, you can't, like, if you ever get off track, you can always go back on track. I've been in and out of going back and forth between this love and fear thing the whole time I've been talking to you. Like, oh, that's off track. Oh, let me get back on love. Oh, let me switch back. It's just this energy exchange is all it is.
Well, without the fear, you wouldn't have any feeling of satisfaction or achievement.
You are satisfied.
Whenever I've been terrified, it's always been the times I've looked back on and say, wow, I was really proud of myself for handling that. Am I allowed to ask you who the best communicator you've ever come across is? The
best communicator? Gosh, there's quite a few. So I don't want to be political, and I'm going to be political. I love Hillary Clinton. I think her and Bill Clinton, I think, are fantastic communicators. They're fantastic communicators. I also, and I'm going to, just to balance that, John McCain, he was running for office, John McCain. Princess Diana, since I'm talking to you and you're a Brit, Princess Diana, what made her an exquisite communicator was her authenticity. People felt like they could just reach in and touch her heart. She had authenticity down. That's why she became the people's princess. She's another one. Archbishop Desmond Tutu, speaking of leaders, oh my gosh, like Nelson Mandela is amazing and all that good stuff. And Archbishop Desmond Tutu, when you see him speak, he just pulls you into him. He just sucks you into him.
Yes.
Another one would be Jack Canfield, Chicken Soup for the Soul guy. Another.
Well.
Pardon me?
I know him well. I spent 10 days in America with him.
Oh yeah, he's a beautiful communicator. And it's not like he looks like he's smart. He's very educated, and he doesn't. He's very He actually, Neil, I would say you and him are very similar. Do you know what I mean? Like when I say that, you and him have very similar energy.
Well, that's a great compliment. And I think with all the people you mentioned, it comes right back to authenticity, and that they say, do, and act, all in integrity and congruency. So that what you see is exactly what they're coming across as. So that's a really useful thing. Thank you. So tell us about Project Forgive, which seems, I've read a little bit about it.
I love Project Forgive.
I watched your video on Kickstarter before I came on here today. So tell us about it.
So I love Project Forgive. And Project Forgive, we did this little 5-minute video. Folks got to go look at it. Go on the website, which is projectforgive.com, or come check us out on Facebook. And it's this 5-minute video that has captured people across the globe, Neil. It's been seen by tens of thousands of people. We continue to get energy pledges because we're continuing funding a film. We're still doing fundraisers. We just did a fundraiser last week in LA. I'm headed to Philly next week for another fundraiser. We're a third of the way done. Project Forgive is a movie and a movement. Our first goal is to get this movie done, which I'm expecting we'll probably have done this year. We're pretty close. We're about a third shot. We have several fundraisers set up. And it's an inquiry. Project Forgive is an inquiry. The inquiry is, what the heck is forgiveness? What is it? It's non-religious. It's non-partisan. It's simply an inquiry, because in this discovery, everyone has a different definition of forgiveness. I've heard, gosh, from Desmond Tutu himself, forgiveness experts across the globe. Some of the interviews we already have, we're going to start putting up some excerpts. The word has been in the realm of the miraculous, because it's a conversation that transcends all religions, all gender, all sexual orientation. It transcends so much. And, you know, the bottom line, what I'm seeing while we did this film, because one of the stories is about Gary, a man who lost his family. And when you watch the video, you'll get it. And, like, you know, some of us have to deal with really tragic things, you know, and some of us don't. And some of us have our own tragedies. Maybe it's your mother gets breast cancer, or maybe you lost your house, or maybe you're getting divorced. Because to me, divorce, we take it pretty lightly, like, because so many people get divorced. We're past the 50% mark. Divorce is one of the most soulful, devastating things that can happen to you. Not judgment getting a divorce. I've gotten a divorce. It impacts your soul, and people are in pain. And to watch how this is evolving, to give people some definitions and some access and some real life world experiences that aren't just tragic, but also include everyday experiences. That's why this has taken off. I could talk on for days about this, Neil.
How long have you been working on the project?
It's physically raising money and such about just over a year.
Oh, wow.
I've known I was going to do this about 7 years ago, and even in my because I'm a speaker and trainer in real life, right? And everything that I do is about love, fear, and forgiveness. I'm not a religious teacher, although I do speak at some churches. I work mostly with corporate, and I work with entrepreneurs, and a lot of people in the health field, like chiropractors, are one of my passions. And it's always this realm. And this is what I loved what you said, Neil, because you said some of your favorite moments are when you look back when you did something when you were really terrified, right? And that's the game. I play the game of stepping into terror. Not somebody putting their gun at you, not that kind of terror. I'm talking about the kind of fear that has you really outstep your boundaries, really go way past your comfort zone. Because when you can go to something that's very fearful and bring it over to the love space, because I believe we have these two choices at any given time. When you can bring it over to the love space where you were scared before, that's when the miracles manifest. And the bridge between the two is forgiveness. Because, like, say someone takes a risk and they try out for the track team. Here's one, and they don't know if they're going to make it. They step into terror. Let's say they don't make it. To try out again, they got to move through forgiveness, forgiving themselves for not getting it right to get over here. Same thing I would say for Project Forgive, because we did 3 videos. The first video only raised just over $10,000. We're raising $100,000 on Kickstarter. First video only got us at $10,000. Went back to the drawing board, and I had to give up a lot of my arrogance, because one of the things that I go to in fear, arrogance is fear, because I'm a know-it-all. All right, I know it all. I've got Emmys. I know how to do this, but something was missing. So we went to an ad agency to help us when we were working on the second video, and I knew it when I'm watching it. My intuition was, this is not what's going to work. This is not going to tip people over. It's not authentic. I needed to go through that to get to the third video, which tipped us over and had us raise just over $100,000 for the initial seed money to get us a third shot, right? And I had to go back and forth from stepping in fear. Oh my gosh, I'm going to ask this. We're going to work with this ad agency. It's the wrong thing. I don't know. Terror. Then when that second video failed, I had to forgive myself. I had to move through forgiveness so I could go back to the love space, get grounded, so I could go for the third attempt. What's going to be the tip over in gossip theory? What's going to work here? I had to actively do my own forgiveness process to make this video tip over. And at any point during that, I could have given up. And a lot of people do, because sometimes it's freaking scary. It is scary. And when you can be in that fear and let it come, like some of those might, that it was a 30-day fart. You know, like being really in a 30-day fart. Like, I have no idea. My reputation's out there. What if I totally fail? What if? So what? I failed. I got another great story to tell and what I learned from it. You know, in the moment it doesn't feel like that, right? In the moment it doesn't feel like that. And that's what stops a lot of people. When you can let the terror come and transform it, dang, because I'm there. You know, I'm just even moved talking to you now. It's like I'm in my dreams. It's so cool what's happening, you know?
Well, it's a great achievement. And I think forgiveness, I mean, it's pretty appropriate now with Nelson Mandela, because as an example of someone who's forgiven so much, he must be right up there amongst the people who've forgiven most. And he's one of the most inspiring people in the world. And I think the chap in your film is Gary, is it? Gary?
Gary, yep, Gary. Yep.
Well,
you know, can I make one comment? I want to make one comment before we go into Gary, because like a lot of times there's good and bad about Nelson Mandela, because we look at Nelson Mandela, we're like, you know, goes into jail for all those years, and then here's you sitting at home like, geez, he forgives him for going into jail for decades, and I can't forgive my husband for leaving his socks on the living room floor. Okay, because those are real things that we're dealing with, right? And one of the things that I'm finding and in a lot of the workshops is playing this game of forgiving yourself for not forgiving. You know, sometimes you're just so freaking mad. And mad is just a feeling. It's when you stay in it, it becomes bitterness. There's stages of forgiveness, whatever. And one of the games that I play, if I'm really mad and I haven't worked through it, because I was mad about the video. I was mad when I didn't pass my PhD defense. I did a lot of work around failing that. I allowed myself to be angry, and my constant mantra was, can you forgive yourself for not being forgiving? Can you forgive yourself? Because that's just a step in the process to get back over to the love space. And it's a journey, and when you let yourself have those feelings, you know, and like Gary, like you were talking about Gary went through a similar journey.
You're a very passionate person, a bit like me, I hope. You have passionate feelings either way, so sometimes it's hard to let it go, isn't it?
Yeah.
Feel strongly about everything. But so how much more have you got to learn? You sound like a very developed person.
Oh, you know what's funny? I think all of us can never stop growing. Never, never, never. There's always something new that's going to happen. Whether it's like now I'm dealing with family issues with grandkids. I have grandchildren, and I'm a very expressed person, and I'm learning how to shut my mouth as a grandmother. Ooh, don't say that. That's not business, Shawne. You know, so like we're always learning at different phases of our life, and even working with making some decisions on the movie. You know, Desmond Tutu had agreed to be in our movie, which was pretty exciting, and then something happened. This was about 7 weeks ago. He was awarded $1.3 million. Woohoo for him! Bummer for us, because he had to bow out of our project. He said, sorry, I'm too busy. I got to go manage this. Doesn't mean he'll never be a part of it. But, you know, it was a major bummer because we were actually talking to somebody else really famous who we were hoping to tip over with Desmond Tutu. Right. And then there's always this forgiveness that's going to happen in that project, whether it's you're in a job and you lose your job and forgiving your boss, or you get a boss who's younger than you and you think they're a jerk. You know, people show up, circumstances show up in your life to have you learn and grow. So I don't think we're ever going to stop learning and growing, Neil, or have the opportunity. We know people that do, like a 7-year-old when he looks at his teacher and says, gosh, when I grow up, I want to be 45, divorced, and 60 pounds overweight. We don't grow up thinking like that, right? And sometimes that's what happens to folks.
And what's next for you, Shawne?
Deeply, what's next is simply getting this film done, and I'm speaking all over. Like, we're coming to London, we're going to Germany, we're going to Calgary, got fundraisers for the rest of the year. A lot of the workshops that we're doing, because I really teach marketing and communication. Now we're incorporating forgiveness in there. I'm getting lots of requests on this notion of forgiveness. A lot of folks that know me, and I'm going to say this very lightly, know that I have a background of molestation, so I talk about it pretty openly. And being able to do a movie about this topic of forgiveness, creating workshops, creating conversations, opening doors for others that may have been molested, because 1 out of 4 women is dealing with overt or covert sexual abuse at some point in her life, not quite sure where the stats stand for men. Just creating those dialogues. It's an odd conversation to like throw in, because it's like in a cycle of reciprocity, it can chop. And what I'm finding when my lighter energy talking about it, because I'm almost 50 now, I can say what happened to me as a child is one of the best things that's ever happened. Not saying bad things are okay to happen and that molestation is good or any of that. But no, we all face challenges, whether it's being molested, being beat, growing up with a neglectful parent or a hypochondriac parent or no parents, whatever, or facing different situations in our life, we all have something we have to face. And we all do. Not that everyone has trauma in their life, but we all have stuff that we're going to have to deal with. And when we can deal with it powerfully, grieve our losses. I've grieved my losses around incest. I've done the work. Would I wish this on anyone? No. And I love the person I've become. I love the person I've become. Because at this age, loving the person I've become gives me so much access to love you. It's so funky how it works.
I think one of the great lessons in life is to actually treat yourself like your own best friend. You get so many people who are so hard on themselves. Yeah. And if you had a friend who talked to you like you talk to yourself sometimes, they wouldn't be your friend for very long.
Yeah.
But, no, you're truly someone who's made a tremendous difference and enjoys making that difference. And the world's a much better place for having you here, Shawne.
Oh, thank you, Neil.
And so it's been delightful to talk to you for our half an hour. And I hope you'll contact us when you're in London.
Of course. Are you kidding?
If you get time to. And I think what you're doing is fantastic. Any way we can support you. And I think Project Forgiveness, if there's one thing we can all do with, is more forgiveness for ourselves and for other people. So,
yes.
So much.
And I just want to correct. It's Project Forgive. Project Forgive on Twitter, Project Forgive on Facebook, Project Forgive online.
Okay, I'm sorry, I got it wrong because I couldn't look at my notes because I was frightened you were going to tell me off.
Yeah, because I know others that are doing projects. They're just not ours, so I don't want to misname it, eh?
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you so much and have a great day.
Oh, it's been a delight, Neil. I look forward to meeting you when I come into your neck of the woods over the pond in the fall.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Shawne.